Vayikach Korach. And Korach took. Last week we learned about the spies, the Miraglim, 10 of whom were led astray by surfaces and by dimensions. Anshe Midot, they're called in the Torah. Men for whom size matters. Kalev and Yehoshua, the two individuals who, notwithstanding peer pressure, notwithstanding what the mob said they should say, withstood. They withstood the relentless attack on their integrity, the relentless undermining of their authority. They were told, hey, it's going to be really bad. Notwithstanding the number of people who sent them emails and made phone calls, the social media enterprise that kicked into full gear to try to make sure that Kalev and Yehoshua had the right talking points when they got back to talk to the people, they stood firm. They were not led astray by their eyes. The end of last week's Torah portion gives us a communal Kalev and Yehoshua on the garments that we wear, forever reminding us that we too should follow the truth and not conform. That truth is the last truth before Korach's Vayikach. The portion that brings us the rebellion of Korach, the paragon of what is known by the rabbis as machloket shelo l'shem shamayim, an argument whose purpose and intention is not pure, that isn't for the sake of heaven. Begins with the mysterious verb vayikach, and he took, which leads the rabbis to wonder, for goodness sakes, tell us what he took. What could possibly have been the thing that he took that is not named? Vayikach Korach. Of course, the simple meaning of the text is that he took people with him. That's what he took. Vayikach Korach. And he took a whole entourage. He took 250 and then some people, and they attacked the authority of Moshe, the greatest leader and the greatest prophet of our people. But I love the interpretation that I saw today that went out on the Chazon listserv, our sister community, Chazon, where Hannah Ilogin wrote, in the name of her grandfather, that Korach was a taker. Vayikach Korach means his whole persona was, give me. Give me. And as the rebellion begins to find steam, we find Hebrew terms like Rav Lecha. Give you, you already have enough. Rav Lecha, you have enough. Give you? Korach is a taker. And he finds his way into leadership by being jealous of that thing which he doesn't have, but that he wants so desperately. Korach, as a taker, represents the kind of posture that we have sometimes when we walk into groups, into communities, into settings, where the ethos is one where people join and then they just leave. They leave as needy as they were when they came in, because they assumed that their need would be met by taking instead of by giving. Some people come to communities for solace. They long for heights and they yearn for ecstasy. They view the spiritual community as a place of concerts without any cleanup. They think of spiritual community as all meals and no dishes. There are some who join a spiritual community who don't mind doing the dishes. They don't mind doing the cleanup. They don't mind rolling up their sleeves to pitch in, but only want to do what they want to do. They don't ask what is needed in the space, but rather make space for my needs, my talents, my proclivities. Spiritual community as place where there is a theater component. There's a stage and everyone gets to play a part. There are some who say, you know, I want to be a chef. And when told there already is a chef, they say, well, that's not fair. When asked if they know how to cook, they say no, but it looks like the cook has so much fun being told how great the dishes are that they make I, too, want to be a cook. This posture of what's in it for me, taking, Vaikach Korach, is anathema to the way that the Zohar HaKadosh, the 13th century mystical text, reads community. The Zohar imagines that each and every one of us is born into the world unlike the Creator who has it all. We have nothing. And so our natural inclination is to say, give me, havli, havli, give me. But that desire to receive in the system of the Zohar known as Ashlagi and Kabbalah becomes the need to turn receptivity into giving. That which is taking becomes that which wants to give. This framing of community as a place where we serve, as opposed to a place where we are served, is a source of a childhood memory that I've carried with me my whole life, and that only tonight I'm telling you. I don't even think I've ever said this publicly before. My father knows this. My sisters know this. My brother knows this. But like any kid growing up, I was totally and absolutely ashamed of my parents as often as possible, especially when we were in public. And my whole life, I wanted my father, in certain ways, to be bigger than he already was, and he was a big man. A big man in heart, a big man in mind, a big man in ruach and spirit. And there was a point in my life where I was embarrassed because my father had become the president of our shul in Great Neck, which was quite a big thing. Maybe 1,000 families in the Great Neck Synagogue. My father was the president of the shul. I remember being so proud as he stood up on Yom Kippur to speak in front of 2,000 people. That's my dad. But then the absolute cringe-worthy shame when, after stepping down, my father refused to have his picture on the president's wall in the synagogue. 20 pictures of fathers and brothers, all men, of course, Orthodox synagogue, all with their ties on. There was Mr. Berkowitz, there was Mr. Greenberg, there was doctor, and then an absolutely empty frame. And that's where my dad's picture was. And for years, I'd say to my pop, I'd say, Pop, how could you not have your picture there? It's almost inviting more attention by not having your picture there. Why don't you just have your picture there? And my father would say, because it was never, ever, he would say, about me. It was never, ever about me. I almost wish that I could have done it without anyone ever knowing that I did it. I stepped in to serve, but I knew that people would say that I was the one responsible for doing this, and I was responsible for the one who transitioned from Rabbi Wolf to Rabbi Polikoff, and I was the one. And I knew that if I were there, that they would think that I cared. And I didn't want that, he said. Vaikach Korach. Korach was a taker. What's in it for me, says Korach. You, Moshe, who are you to lord it over all of us? To be a part of a community. As the great philosopher Isaiah Leibowitz said, to be part of a community is to have something greater than the sum of its parts. To be a part of a community is to say that at the center of the community is what the community is here to do. He reads Korach's argument. All of the people of Israel, says Korach, are holy. Uvetocham Adonai. Leibowitz says, all of the people individually are holy. That's not the Torah's way. Each and every person, of course, is holy, but kiddoshim to you in the plural, not singular. Holier together, stronger together. Putting the community and its purpose at the center. In a few weeks, we'll have our community gathering. And everyone here who's been a part of this community knows that even though we honored Marsha Meislin and Karen Goldstick at our benefit 2 weeks ago, if there are two people and they have a lot of others that they connect with, who put the community at the center, it is the two of them. The generosity of time and talent and treasure that they have poured into this community is representative of an ethos here in this community of pull up a chair and get to work. Their generosity is the generosity not of vayikach, of let me take, but how can I serve? How can I inspire? How can I lift other people up? They put Yiddishkeit, Judaism, inspiration at the center, and they generously invite others to pull up a chair. They say, ask not what Romamu can do for you, but what you can do for the Mu. And it's not just you, Marsha, and it's not just Karen, and it's not just all of the lay leaders on the screen and the lay leaders in this room, but Romamu's entire ethos for over a decade has been about generosity. We never thought to ourselves, it's enough if we're in the room. We wondered who else can still come and be a part of this thing. Because of the generosity of not taking but giving, the Romamu board years ago decided we should have a yeshiva. We should build a place where just today we finished our 19-day immersion experience, and Jessica Litwak, who's smiling and smiling and smiling in the pews, is infinitely honored by all of the Romamu locals whose generosity helped birth a place where people from all over the world, in person and online, can come and study Jewish renewal and Chassidut in a postmodern, fully egalitarian, fully alive way. That is not vayikach, not to take, but to give. So tonight, our second gathering here after a pandemic. And my deepest fear as we now open up is that we return to business as usual, where synagogues are basically a fee for service, where mosques and churches and other communities that are focused around the sacred invite the kind of narcissism and consumerism and individualism that we as Jews have always said is anathema to spiritual growth. I would love to see in the year ahead and in the years to come a community that shows up for one another, yeah? A community that doesn't ask what will they give, but comes forward and says, what can we serve? How can we be deployed? A community that doesn't think of itself and its individuals before it thinks of the collective, of this chevraya, this holy community. My hope and prayer is that we will be together on June 22nd to lift up our lay leaders. My hope and prayer is as the months come along, that this Romumu community, which has shown itself to be so generous and so selfless and so remarkably able to pivot and to position itself in a place for spiritual aliveness and vitality, that it will serve the larger community, that it will serve the global community. It will recognize that the taking and taking and taking of this earth's resources has depleted it, and it's time for us to give back. So I want to bless each and every one of you, and I hope that tonight when you go home, wherever you will be, in the Zoom or in the room, you'll ask yourself the question, in what places in my life am I taking, and in what places am I giving, and where is it both? And that we might build a community together that is constructed from a world of service towards a greater aim. Please rise.